everyone. Welcome to part 3 of our Loon series. Today I'm excited to have Sheila Johnston with us, also known as the Loon Lady. She is with Minnesota Loon Rescue, and we're going to learn some good stuff on how to be better stewards of our loons here in Minnesota. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Loon series. I'm with Sheila Johnston. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Erica. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Tell us where you're on the Zoom call from. Where are you at right now?
I'm on Upper Gull Lake on the Gull chain of lakes in Lakeshore, Minnesota, which is a little bit north of Brainerd.
Great. And you are part of the Minnesota Loon Rescue. So why don't we just start right off with tell us what Minnesota Loon Rescue is?
Well, Minnesota Loon Rescue is an organization of volunteers that have been trained to safely rescue and transport loons to DNR certified loon rehabbers.
What got you into this?
Well, so I live on Upper Gull and, I'm on the water in my kayak pretty much from ice out to ice in, observing loons. And several years ago, our favorite pair, Oli and Lena, they nest down in a channel that comes into the main body of Upper Gull. And Upper Gull is a highly recreational lake. We've got lots of boats just passing through and tons of wake boats and tubers and lots of jet skis. And so loons can be very much at risk on a lake like this. And on our lake, I'd say from like mid-June to the end of July, it's kind of like rush hour freeway traffic going fast. So the loons are really in danger from human-caused activities. And besides boat and jet ski strikes, we can have loons that are hooked or entangled in fishing line. And then there's the number one cause of loon deaths, which is lead poisoning. So a number of years ago, 4th of July is our busiest time on the lake. So the next day, I went out to check and see if Oli and Lena and their chick were okay. And as I was paddling into the chick rearing area down by the channel, Lena came right up to my kayak and she came so close that her beak was almost touching the tip of my kayak. And I just said, Lena, why are you coming so close today? And then she swam next to my kayak and then I followed her and she went over to the reed bed and there was her dead chick that had gotten hit by a boat during the night when the people were coming and going to 4th of July fireworks, most likely. And so that's when I just decided something had to change and we needed to do more. And so first we started a loon safe boating program and it evolved into starting a loon rescue program. And it took several years for us to get it off the ground. But last fall, we were able to collaborate with Wildlife Rehabilitation and Release, which is a top not loon, but wildlife rescue organization and rehab organization that's based in the metro area, but they do rescue loons. So they came up to the Brainerd area and we did an all-day training with 30 volunteers from outstate Minnesota. And Wildlife Rehab and Release does rescue loons, but because they're based in the metro, they don't have as many loons in that area as we do in outstate Minnesota. So that's how we got going.
So Sheila, why is there a need for loon rescue?
So the leading causes of loon deaths are human caused, and the most common cause is lead poisoning. And loons ingest lead most often through what we call active fishing, and their loons are visual predators. So if you're casting and they see, your jig shining in the water, they might just go after that and get hooked. Or sometimes loons are hooked when people are actually casting, and they might just go after your bait or your jig when it's under the water. And loons also pick up lead sinkers and tackle from the lake bottom when they go on the lake bottom to pick up gravel to aid digestion. And sometimes they might just pick up one little tiny sinker. And so if they ingest that sinker or a piece of lead tackle, it will kill them within 2 to 3 weeks. And it's a slow, painful death. But if we find that loon quickly, they can be treated and they may recover, but most loons that ingest lead tackle die. So the best thing you can do is fish with lead-free tackle. And there's many different types of lead-free tackle that are very effective, and tungsten is the most effective for fishermen. And the anglers really like tungsten, so we would really encourage people to switch to lead-free tackle and encourage their family members to switch to lead-free tackle. Another good reason to switch to lead-free tackle is it's toxic to handle lead, and so you're protecting yourself. And if you have kids fishing, you're protecting them because lead is especially toxic for children. Hooking and entanglement with fishing line is another cause of loon injuries and deaths. And for loon rescuers, those are some of our most traumatic rescues because we see so many loons that are so terribly hooked and tangled, and they suffer so much in those situations. So the one thing people can do is if they hook a loon, if the line breaks, you call Minnesota Loon Rescue right away because 90% of loons that are hooked die. And if we can get on the water quickly, we have a much better chance of finding that loon and rescuing it and taking it to rehab where it can safely be untangled.
So what can anglers do to protect loons?
If you're an angler, please switch to lead-free tackle, and it will protect you too. Handling lead is toxic to people and especially children. There are many lead-free alternatives: tungsten, bismuth, steel, and tin. And anglers say tungsten is more effective than lead. And you can teach your kids and grandkids to fish lead-free. And a really helpful thing you can do is to ask your local bait shop to stock lead-free tackle. If you're not an angler, you can encourage friends and family to switch to lead-free tackle. And the MPCA Get the Lead Out program has a list of lead-free tackle manufacturers on their website, so you can easily order lead-free tackle from those reps. The best thing you can do if you are a fishing person is stay 200 feet away from loons. Never cast towards loons or loon chicks, loon families. If a loon is approaching your boat or lingering, just reel in your lines. That's the best thing you can do so loons don't get hooked. And just wait for them to leave. And if they don't leave, then switch spots. Never discard broken fishing line in the water. They can easily get tangled, and other wildlife can get tangled too. You need to take it to shore, cut it into small pieces, and dispose of it safely. And we understand accidents happen. If you can't land that loon safely and unhook it safely, I'm not advising anyone to do that. Then what you should do is immediately after that line breaks or is cut, immediately you call Minnesota Loon Rescue, and we will get a team out on the water as fast as we can. And if you let us know where the loon was located, we can get, and maybe which way it was swimming, we can get a team out there very quickly to help.
How do they look if they're sick from like lead poisoning? How do you identify that?
Well, one thing that's really important to know is that if a loon is beached or on land, that's a sick or injured loon, and it really, really needs to be rescued. Never, ever put a loon that you find on land back in the water. Loons do not go on land unless they're sick or injured. Sometimes loons actually will land on pavement. So if they're flying at night or whenever, when it's raining and there's wet pavement, they'll mistake the pavement for water and they'll crash land. And so you might see that loon and think, well, it looks okay. But no, it could have very serious internal injuries. So a loon that you find next to a road or on the road definitely needs to go to rescue as well. So loons on land, loons on a beach need rescue. Also, sometimes sick or injured loons will hide under docks. It's not normal for a loon to be spending a lot of time hiding under a dock. Sometimes when there's territorial disputes between loons, a loon may hide just to be safe, but sometimes they're hiding because they're sick or injured. So they're going to need some observation. And the best thing you can do in that situation then is call for loon rescue.
So Sheila, what are things that boaters can do to protect loons?
Well, the best way to protect loons is to give them plenty of distance. So if you'd like to watch loons, do it at a distance with binoculars. Or if you have a camera, you should be doing it with a zoom lens, not sneaking up on them with, a little phone camera or something. And never feed loons, because this will teach them to approach fishing boats and that will endanger their lives. I'll just tell you a little story. Last fall, my loon watching friend Darcy and I were out searching for a badly entangled loon. And we were really having trouble finding it. And we spotted a loon a bit of distance away from us. So we were in our fishing boat and we just cut the motor and we were just floating. And this beautiful juvenile loon came up and it came up right behind the motor and it just looked at us like, feed me, feed me. And then it dove under the boat, came up on the side, same thing. I have a golden retriever. It looked just like my golden retriever looking at me, waiting for a treat. And we knew people had been feeding that loon. That's just not normal behavior. So in the fall, loon parents leave their juveniles about a month before the juveniles are ready to migrate. And so now the juveniles need to be fishing for themselves. This fed juvenile thinks the easiest way to get fed is to go to a fishing boat. So that juvenile is very much at risk of being hooked. So please do not feed adult loons or juveniles. It's one of the worst things you could do. The other thing people can do is for sure to stay 200 feet away from nesting loons and then loons that are on the water. Boaters and jet skiers need to be loon aware and always watching for loons. If you have other people on the boat with you, they can help watch for loons. Never assume loons will dive out of your way. Loons will not dive when they're protecting chicks, and chicks are unable to dive out of the way of boats. And chicks can blend in really easily with the water and be very difficult to see. They're kind of really young chicks are sort of gray, but as they're older, they're sort of brown and very difficult to see. And on many of our lakes that are highly recreational with boats and jet skis speeding through the chick rearing areas, those areas are just so dangerous for loons because boats are coming at them from every which way. And even though some loons can dive out of the way, you can just never trust that they're going to be able to do it. And so you have to be the responsible one and go slow and give them plenty of space. Remember that these are shared waters and we need to do what's right to protect loons from boat strikes. If you're a jet skier, loons can't anticipate the high speed turns and moves that jet skis make, the zigzagging, the circling, the frogging. All of those things are very dangerous for loons, and the best thing to do is pick a different part of the lake or the chain of lakes that you're on where there aren't loons. So if you're a member of a lake association, you can develop a loon safe boating and a loon safe fishing program to educate boaters and anglers. And I have resources that I can share with you if you're interested in that. We make loon safe boating and fishing cards that we distribute to all the boat rental businesses and resorts in our area that rent boats, and the resorts that have people that bring their own boats. The other thing our lake association does is we have these pretty large signs that we made. They're metal signs that are modeled after the caution children signs, only they're say caution loon chicks ahead, go slow. And sometimes at least in our area, the sheriff's department that monitors and regulates buoys on the lake, doesn't want extra buoys. So if you can't put loon caution buoys out on the water, this is another alternative. If you can get permission to put loon caution buoys out on the water where you think they'd be needed, like in our area, we put them near the end of channels because a lot of the loons nest and in channels and have chick rearing areas in channels, and outside of the channels, which are the big danger zones, that's where we put our loon caution buoys. One thing parents and grandparents can do is to educate their children about loon safe boating and loon safe jet skiing. Our lake association does have youth boater safety class, and it's not just open to the kids on the Gull chain, but it's open to kids from other lakes too. So you could check to see if there is a youth boater safety class in your area that your young boaters could attend. Parents really need to know what their kids are doing on the lake. And, I have met some jet skiers who's were not even supposed to be where they were on this lake. Their parents didn't know where they were. So if parents can really be aware of what their kids are doing, that would go a long way. And just teaching them all the strategies for boating responsibly near loons and other wildlife. Our lake association has developed some loon safe boating and loon safe fishing cards that are like 5x7 postcard size. And I pass those out to the kids at the loon safe boating class and teach them about loon safe boating and fishing. And the PDF is available for other lake associations if they're interested in it. They can contact me and I can share it with them. And then beyond just educating our kids, we pass out those loon safe boating and fishing cards to all the boat rental businesses and resorts in our area. And then the staff shares those cards with people that are renting boats or people that bring their own boats to the resorts. And the staff also goes over the information with the boaters, so they're really aware of what to do when they are out on our lakes. I have one other tip for people. One thing that people can do is to preserve natural shorelines or restore shorelines, because a huge threat to loons is just a lack of natural nesting areas. And so we can all do, if we live on the lake, do better by keeping our properties as natural as possible. And not using fertilizer is a huge thing people can do, because fertilizer runs off into the lake and reduces water clarity because of the algae growth, etc. And loons need clear water for fishing and feeding their young. So if you can maintain your property in a way that is lake friendly, you'll also be protecting loons.
Is there anything that people can do to donate to Loon Rescue or anything like that? Or another organization?
Couple of things you can do. So the Loon Project, that is led by Dr. Walter Piper, is doing amazing research on loons in Minnesota and Wisconsin and the Midwest. And the Loon Project could really use some donations to support their activities here in Minnesota. We have loons on study lakes in both Crow Wing and Cass County that are being studied and are part of the Loon Project, including the loons on our chain of lakes. And the information that Dr. Piper is gathering is going to have, I think, a really important impact on the survival of loons in our state and others. The other thing is for the Minnesota Loon Rescue, we aren't taking donations, but we are developing a clothing line for Minnesota Loon Rescue, and we're going to be having an online store on our Facebook page and our website, and it will just be some really nice t-shirts, short-sleeved men's and women's t-shirts, long sleeves, and hoodie and crew neck sweatshirts with our logo. I guess I'd like to say one more thing. So if you do find an injured or sick loon and you're not sure what to do, the contact information is on the Minnesota Loon Rescue Facebook page. And there's also contact information, I think, for Wildlife Rehab and Release and Loon Rescue Inc., which is in Wisconsin. And, if you leave a message on that Facebook page, I can respond to it.
All right. Thanks so much, Sheila. I'm so grateful for all your work.
Well, thank you, Erica. I appreciate everything you do too. And it's been great to talk about loons with you.